write down any questions that you have because I have 49 slides to get through. So at the very end, I'll take any questions that you have because, you know, we go through a lot of material, a lot of things will hopefully will get answered at some point in the presentation. My focus is on small space, decorative, organic gardening. And I do have a blog that I keep. My card was up front when you all signed in. If you want to follow along with me, I just blog about what's going on in the garden, you know, this week. I do it a couple of times a week, and that's my focus, small space, organic gardening. I started doing edible gardening when I lived in Cincinnati on a golf course. And they do have the landscape police there. So you have to make sure it's pretty. So that's how I got started into it. And you know, the lots are not real big on a golf course. You have little lots and a lot of golf course behind you. And so I started doing edible gardening in the garden beds and in pots. This is up here on the screen. That's a picture of the back of our house when we lived in Cincinnati. And the pots that are on the patio, those are all edibles as well as, you know, flowers to make it look pretty, right? So I'm happy to be here today. The McCracken County Master Gardener Group asked me to come, and so this is brought to you by both counties. So what we'll cover today are seasons and crop preferences, examples of cool and warm season crops, because you don't want to plant crops that like chilly weather in the middle of the summer. They won't do well in a pot. And we'll talk about how to decide what to grow, crops, and pot size needed. The smaller the plant, the smaller the pot you can get away with. Pot preparation, how to set your edibles and your flowers up for success. Planting in pots and considerations to take into account for care of pots. And then I'll answer questions at the end. The objective is to cover what we can grow in Kentucky in all 4 seasons, a basic understanding of what you can grow in containers, how to decide what to plant, and then to answer some questions. So, in Kentucky, we do have 4 seasons. And they basically, when it comes to edible gardening, they're divided out into 2 groups, the cold season crops and the warm season crops. We're just wrapping up cold season, you know, spring, and we're getting ready to head into summer, which is the warm season. A home garden can produce edibles in all 4 seasons. You should grow the varieties that flourish in each of the season's conditions. Cool season crops are best planted in early spring for spring harvesting, and then in late summer, early fall for fall and winter harvesting. Warm season crops are best planted in late spring after all danger of frost has passed. And they will produce from summer all the way through until you get your first frost. Sometimes some of them will survive until your first freeze. Right now is the time to plant for warm season crops. Here are examples of cool season and warm season crops. So if you're thinking, well, what would be good to plant now? Focus on these warm season crops, because that's what we should be planting right now. Things like artichokes, basil, bay laurel, beans, borage, corn, cucumbers, edamame, which is soybeans, eggplant, kohlrabi, lemongrass, lemon verbena, marjoram, melons, Malabar spinach, New Zealand spinach, parsley, rosemary, savory, stevia, okra, peppers, squash, sweet potatoes, and America's favorite, tomatoes, right? So those are all the kinds of crops that are great to get into a container right now. Cool season crops, they thrive during the cool days of spring and very early summer, and then again in fall and winter. When temperatures start to reach the 80s, which we're going to have a lot of those next week, according to the forecast, the cool season crops are triggered to produce seed. So what they do for greens, like in this pot right here, that is red-sailed lettuce. So that's what it looks like when it bolts. I think it's beautiful, right? But they send up a stalk to flower and then to set seed. For cauliflower and broccoli, their florets produce pretty little yellow flowers, so if you don't harvest your broccoli in time, it'll have nice, pretty little yellow flowers all over it. And you can actually pick that and put it in salads. For many bulbing plants, it's the signal to produce their bulb and flower. So like onions, potatoes, beets, turnips, those types of things. As the daylight hours get longer and it gets warmer, they get the bat signal. Okay, my fun is over, time to set seed and continue on. For cool season crops, to extend the season into colder conditions. So you wanted to start earlier in the spring instead of waiting until March. You want to start in February. Or in the fall, if you can grow cold season crops again in the fall. If you want to extend it all the way into the winter and maybe all the way through till next spring, give them a cover. When you put a cover over a plant, it warms it about a zone. So we're zone 7, giving it a coat, we'll bring it up to zone 8. So that's like northern Georgia. So it's, it helps it. I typically can harvest, I put a portable greenhouse cover over my greens, and I harvest all the way through. Even through that really cold weather we have, it didn't kill the plants that were undercover. In the picture up there, you can see a little portable greenhouse that I had. If you want to keep them producing into hotter conditions, so again, these are crops that like it cool, move it to a shadier spot. Move it to a cooler spot. It's typically coolest on the north side. And grow varieties for warm regions. So, grow lettuce that was raised in Israel or, southern Italy or Sicily or something like that, Turkey. The warmer, where it's warmer all the time, they're used to the warmer weather, so that can extend how long you can harvest. Warm season crops thrive during the warm days of early summer through fall. They originated in temperate and tropical regions, so they don't do well until the soil warms. I just think of those poor little tomatoes that are used to the tropics, and you go and throw them out there the 1st of April when that soil is really cold, and I can just see them shivering in that cold soil. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to plant them really early because they don't like it cold. And when it warms up, they'll take off. So you don't really gain anything. Now, if you do really want to get them going early, give them a cover, to let the soil warm up and give them more warmth. And many are killed by the first frost of fall. Basil's one that, if you get that first frost, all your basil's gone. Now, tomatoes and peppers, they'll make it through until you get a freeze. And extending the season for warm season crops, practice succession planting. So if you want your tomatoes to go until November, you put the first ones out in May, maybe put the second ones out in mid-June. And when the first ones are starting to ramp down, the second ones are coming on strong. Grow varieties that were developed in cooler regions later in the season or earlier in the season. You know, you get a tomato plant that, say a Siberian tomato, it's really cold in Siberia. So they can, you know, they're adapted to go out earlier, and they would handle the colder temperatures that going into fall as well. Move them to a sunnier spot. You know, when it's cool, south side is the warmest. So for your summer crops, you want to put them on the south side as it's warming up, and then it's back again in the fall. And use a cover when it starts getting really cold if you want to keep them going. So how to decide what to grow? There's lots and lots to grow out there, right? I would start with what you love to eat and make a list. Research if they are a cool season or a warm season crop, and plan to plant for the season they grow well in. Look at your potential garden pot area. Veggies and herbs do best in full sun. You want, you know, at least 6 hours of sun. Typically, the more sun you have, the more growth and the more fruits you'll get from warm season crops. Don't forget about decks, patios, sidewalks, and driveways. Add it all up to see how much room is available for potted edibles. You can grow a lot of food in pots. Take your plant list and see how many pots you can use based on the space you have. You can grow multiple edibles with flowers in very large pots. I typically, I don't know how to silence it, I'm sorry. Like all my greens, I grow them in an earth box. All my lettuce, and I put like 6 lettuces in each earth box. So if you have larger pots, you can put multiple edibles in them. And it's good to group the plants together that like similar growing conditions. You know, lettuce likes moisture, you know, likes it cooler, and spinach. So you put lettuce and spinach together. For those that like it warm and drier conditions, like tomatoes and peppers, you know, you could put those together. Self-watering pots can save a lot of watering time in the summer months. So they're the ones that, when you go to water, they have a reservoir in the bottom that holds water. Or you can buy big catch pans, you know, and fill up the catch pan so it can absorb water and you don't have to water like every other day. I water about once a week in the summer with my pots, but I use either self-watering pots or I have large catch pans. Herbs are by far the easiest edible to grow. Mediterranean herbs, they thrive on neglect. They like it when it's dry. When it's dry like that, it actually concentrates their oils and makes them even more fragrant and strong. So if you're not sure where to start, you know, something like oregano, chives, those are good ones to start with. And in my garden, many varieties grow better in a pot. There's some that my edibles, I have plenty of gardening space now that I live out in Catawba. But I still grow all my greens in pots. I grow my eggplant and peppers in pots because they seem to like it better. I mean, they're from tropical regions, so it stands to reason that they'll like it in a pot because it's warmer than if they were in the ground. And I'll even grow, I've grown just about anything that you can put in the ground in a pot too. They make lots of varieties that are compact and for containers. If you look at Burpee or Ferry Morse, it says on the front of the seed packet, look at them, it'll have a little clay pot on there and say container ready. So there's lots and lots of varieties now that have been bred to be more compact. Biggest thing, start small and easy. You know, the first time, only try 2 or 3 pots. You know, don't go completely crazy as you're, you know, learning how to grow that vegetable or that herb and those flowers. And then next year, you can just go crazy. So, these next few slides are based upon the size of pot that you have. What can you grow in it? An 8-inch wide by 6 to 8-inch deep pot is about the smallest that you can really grow an edible in. So you can grow these things in a pot that's that small. Carrots, you have to get the ones that are little short ones or round ones, you know, not like 8-inch long ones, you know. So Thumbelina is one that's a nice small little carrot. Parmax, Fonda di Pierogi, and these I haven't updated these in a few years. They keep coming out with more and more varieties. So this is not an exhaustive list. Greens, right there, the pot that you see on that slide, that's dinosaur kale with a little petunia in the driveway next to the garage door. So you can grow greens in smaller pots, and lettuce or kale. For containers that are 10 inches wide by 10 inches deep or larger, then you can grow slightly bigger carrots and dwarf cabbage. Eggplant with small fruits. You don't want like Black Beauty, which gets great big fruits. You know, there's just not enough soil in there to support that vegetative and fruit growth. But you can grow the eggplants that do have small fruits. Greens, you can get into like French sorrel. They are a perennial that can get quite large. Salad burnette, spinach, herbs, any. Remember, Mediterranean herbs love having dry feet. Lettuce, if you're going to take them to let them get a full head, these are the types that you can use for that. Peppers, you want more of the compact type in pots this small. Radishes and strawberries. Going up to medium-sized containers, 14 to 16 inches wide and 10 inches deep or larger. Now you can grow beans, either compact bush types or runner or pole beans. Most pole beans, they'll get over 6 feet tall, so you'll need to use a trellis, and you'll probably have to pinch off the top, otherwise they'll come back down on you, which I don't know, that could be okay. But if you want to keep them kind of in control, just pinch the top off. You can grow any kind of beets, broccoli rabe, celery. I grow celery all the time in a pot. Celery loves moisture, and it stays there 365 days a year. Celery is a great one to grow in a pot, but you probably want to put it by itself because it will suck all the moisture out from everything else. Any kind of chard, they even have sweet corn that you can grow in a pot. And now if you're going to grow sweet corn in a pot, you know, you have to have 9 to 18 plants to get good pollination, so you have to probably hand pollinate them to get, you know, a full ear, but you can grow them in a pot. Cucumber, compact bush types, so, you know, look in the description for bush cucumber, but you can grow, cucumbers do well in a pot. All types of eggplant, horseradish, all kales. There, the picture on the right, that's Egyptian walking onions in a pot. harvest from them year-round. For containers that are 14 to 16 inches wide and 10 inches deep, still these are just more that you can grow in there. Okra, onions, peas, all types of peppers. So now you can even get the bigger fruiting peppers once you get up to this size pot. You can grow tomatoes. Now you need to look for the bush, dwarf, patio, or compact types. Ones that were bred to stay smaller. Now, anytime that you're going to grow a bush type plant or a compact or a patio, you're not going to get as many fruits off of them as you would if you had a 5-foot tall plant. But it's probably, enough for a couple of people, And there's nothing like a vine-ripened tomato. Turnips, summer squash, compact bush types again. But there are compact bush types of squash that do very well in pots. Now you're getting up to larger pots. You can grow columnar apples, any kind of beans, blueberry bushes, the smaller ones like top hat, broccoli. I grow sprouting broccoli in pots. Broccoli, when you get the heading kind, it takes a long time to get a harvest, and you only get like just that one plant. And the cabbage moth loves to infest them. Whereas sprouting broccoli, it grows and has lots of leaves, and you can use the leaves in lettuce, and then it will grow little florets that you can also, pick off and put in your salad. You can grow cantaloupe, fig trees, all kinds of lettuce, peanuts, peas, all types, peppers, all types, potatoes. They even have potato boxes nowadays, that are made specifically for you to be able to add more and more dirt to them. Shallots, sweet potatoes, watermelon. For watermelon, you'd have to stick with the smaller ones, not the ones that grow 15 feet long, but the smaller watermelons. Winter squash, compact bush types. And then you get into the big pots. So these are really large containers on the scale of a half whiskey barrel or wine barrel. I kind of skipped over. I didn't tell you what these plants are. So the picture of this plant is some different lettuces in a larger pot. The pot's about, that big around. It has snow peas in it and flowers. This is a pepper plant with some arugula and petunias. Isn't that pretty? And then here's my earth boxes that have the several greens in them. And then over to the right is a cabbage plant with a little petunia. But when you get into really large containers like whiskey barrels, you can grow anything in them. You can grow full-size tomatoes, full-size whatever. They are big enough to grow anything that you want in there. Or you can also put multiple plants smaller plants in something that size. Okay, write it down. Here's just some example of different kinds of gardens that you could do for pots. You could have a salsa spaghetti pizza garden, if you want to get the kids or the grandkids interested in gardening and edibles. You could tell them it's their little pizza garden, and you put peppers, tomatoes, garlic or cilantro, and oregano, and then it gives you, the smallest pot that you could grow each of those in. Salads for spring and fall. If you want salads throughout the spring and fall season, these are the greens. that do well in the spring and fall. And then, again, for cool season crops, you give them full sun in the cool weather, and then you want to give them some shade and kind of put them on the north side so they can stay cool as long as possible so that you can harvest from them as long as possible. Most lettuces, when they start to bolt, they get bitter and charred. It'll get strong too when it starts getting really hot. And for salads, if you're growing lettuce in a pot, you can just pick the outer leaves and let the inner part continue to grow. So that way you get, you can just harvest off of it until it bolts. So, and then it's best to pick greens in the morning, put them in water, and put them in the refrigerator so that they sweeten up for you by afternoon. Summer. So I spend a lot of time trying, because I like salads, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what greens can tolerate our hot, humid weather and still be sweet, not bitter or, immediately bolt. So what I found is there are heat-tolerant lettuces that you can grow. And then there's some, I really use sprouting broccoli a lot, red Malabar spinach, New Zealand spinach, and auric, amaranth. Those are all greens that stay sweet all through the summer, and you can eat them just like lettuce. And all greens like a little cool in the summer. And then in the winter, you're back to the same things that like the spring are the ones that like it whenever you're going into winter. Just go ahead and get winter hardy lettuce, and it'll say it on the packet if it's winter hardy lettuce. That gives you the best chance of it staying alive as long as possible. Winter hardy spinach, radishes, peas, chard, dandelion greens, arugula, winter hardy kale, sprouting broccoli, celery. I harvest from my celery that I keep outside year round. Chickweed, tarragon, mustard greens. And if you want to have them last for sure all the way through the winter, you can get a portable greenhouse and put it over the top of them. The biggest thing to watch out for whenever you start using covers is not scorching your plants. Because you know how our temperatures go. They're like, woo, woo, they're a roller coaster. And when it gets up in the 50s, you really need to vent that cover. Otherwise, it'll get a lot hotter under there. And then you plant for your fall and winter greens, you plant those in late summer. Look at what the seed packet says on days to harvest, add 2 weeks. Takes 2 weeks longer in the fall for something to come to full size. You want it to full size by November if possible, because that's when we get less than 10 hours of daylight, and growth pretty much stops mid-November to mid-January until we start getting back to 10 hours and more of daylight. There's lots of fruits you can grow in pots. Strawberries, blueberries, and berry bushes, fig and columnar apple trees, citrus trees, and goji berry bushes, other dwarf vining fruits like melons, and of course, get a big whiskey barrel, you can grow anything with it. So, you've seen all your crops, you've decided on what you're going to grow, and now it's time to get that pot ready. Pots should be revitalized every year. You should either replace the soil with new potting soil that already, and all of them already come with fertilizer in them, or at least add a balanced fertilizer and mix well prior to planting. After about 3 or 4 years, I'll actually also add compost and remix it up together. Practice crop rotation in your pots too. I mean, it's just like in the garden soil, you know. So you grow tomatoes one year, try and grow lettuce the next. Now, I don't always do that, and they seem to do fine. Yeah?
Did you say revitalize every season or?
So, I just do it every year. And then when if I'm gonna, I'll get into fertilizing, but, you know, for your pots, if you're using like a liquid fertilizer, you probably need to fertilize every other week during the growing season, to keep the nutrition in. It depletes about twice as fast as it does in the garden soil because you're putting that water right on through it, right? So it leaches out a lot quicker than in the garden bed. Okay, make sure your pot is big enough for your crop, and pots tend to dry out faster than the garden and be warmer too. But self-watering pots or great big catch pans reduce significantly the need to water in summer. Just real quickly, on getting plants, you can grow your own or purchase seeds. They've got lots of seeds in all the big box stores and local hardware stores. They come in seed packets, or you can get the ones in seed tapes that are automatically spaced for how far apart they should be. If you start them indoors, just make sure that you ease them into the outdoor conditions. You don't want to take them from your living room out into the full sun. You want to give them about a week, just kind of ease them on out there, a little bit more sun every day. Because it's just like you, in January, if you go to Florida, you wear sunscreen, right? Otherwise you get a sunburn. It's the same for the plants. The sun will scald them. You can buy transplants from nurseries, farmers markets, hardware stores, big box stores, or get extras, you know, from neighbors who garden. But they just have all kinds of varieties now that you can just walk in and buy plants of. There's I started seeds, and those are paper towel. Cut them up, you know, put seed starting mix in it, start your seeds. When you're starting seeds outdoors, make sure you follow seed packet instructions. Some seeds require daylight to germinate. So if it says 1/8 of an inch, anything that says like 1/8 of an inch, it requires some sunlight to germinate. So if you plant them too deep and the sun can't get to them, then they won't germinate. Others require darkness, so you know, if it says plant them 1 inch or 2 deep, plant them 1 inch or 2 deep, but just follow the instructions. And some require what they call scarification, which basically you scratch the outside and put them in water, say for 24 hours or something, and that breaks the seed hull so that they can then sprout. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started doing seed starting is I kept my soil too wet. You just want it moist. You do not want it sopping wet. The seed will rot. Also, for your plants, you know, initially they require more moisture than as they go on. As soon as they've used up that little seed nutrition, then after that they have to start using their roots to get nutrition and oxygen. And if you keep that soil sopping wet, basically you're asphyxiating the plant because it has to have oxygen in those roots. So that's just one of the biggest reasons why indoor plants die anyway, is because they're kept too wet. Yeah. Fruits and veggies love flowers. Flowers attract pollinators, and that's how you get fruits, right? In plants is the pollinator pollinates the flowers, which then produces the fruit. So the more pollinators you have, the more fruits you will have. So adding a flower or decorative plant, looks great, plus it gives you more to eat. Determine what type of decorative plant to add based on the fruit or vegetable you're growing with it. There's this saying that they have for when you're gardening in pots and you want it to look pretty. Thriller, spiller, and filler. So the thriller is the main event. It's usually the tall plant, or it's one that just has, beautiful coloring. That's your thriller. And then the spiller, so if you're growing an eggplant, which is just a beautiful plant, it has beautiful structure. You grow a spiller with it, a petunia. So a petunia and an eggplant, a petunia and a pepper plant, they look great together. If you're growing a vining plant like strawberries, an upright flower or decorative plant would be pretty, or you could even grow another edible with it. Don't rule out adding edibles as the decorative touch, like a short vining snow pea with red lettuce. That's a beautiful combination. So when you're gardening in pots, what can go wrong? Well, if you water inconsistently, it can lead to blossom end rot in tomatoes. So if you water, and then don't water for a long time, and then water, it can cause blossom end rot. It can also cause your tomatoes to crack because all of a sudden they've got too much moisture. It can cause greens to bolt prematurely if they're getting too dry. Greens like a lot of moisture. So if you let them completely dry out, they can bolt sooner rather than later. And it can cause the plant to die with inconsistent watering. In cool season, they don't need as much, so you don't need to be watering, every other day. If it rained outside, you probably don't need to water that week when it's cool outside. And then in the summer, if you're watering too little, the plant evaporates a lot of moisture out of its leaves, to moderate its temperature. So they need a lot more water in the summer. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you pot a plant, it changes the hardiness zone that plant can tolerate. So in a pot, in the summer, it's like being a zone hotter, because the roots just get a lot hotter because they're exposed, to those 80 and 90 degree days. And then in the winter, to be on the safe side, if you want something that you're putting in a pot to last through the winter, I'd make sure it's a zone 5 or lower. Then you have a really good chance that it will survive. So it's like 2 zones colder for the pot and the plant is what it's experiencing. Fertilizing, we kind of talked about this already. It leaches out of pots at a much higher rate than garden soil. So you will need to fertilize more often than in the garden bed. So in the garden bed, I normally use a granular fertilizer, once a month. In pots, it's to really keep them growing, it's like every other week. So, summary of planting and care. For edibles, you want to plant in a full sun location. Can use a cover during cold snaps in the spring and fall. Edible crops, they need about 3 inches of water weekly during the summer. So they need about 1 inch in the spring and about 3 inches in the summer. To check to see if they need watering, put your finger on down into that pot, like that deep. So if you're one that might be, let's call a helicopter plant caretaker, one that hovers all the time, stick your finger down, almost up to your second knuckle. If it's still moist down in there, you don't need to water. So that's just, just something to use to see whether or not it's really time to water. In the summer, it's kind of hard to overwater them, but you can do it. It is not impossible. Keep an eye out for pests. The easiest way to control them is to remove them by hand. And keep a garden journal. Take pictures. Enjoy. I don't think I'm gonna go through all this in case there's questions. But I just wrote up like all the ways that I use what I'm growing in the garden. Just different ways that you can actually use them in cooking, eating, making gifts for others. One of the things I do have on here, the ancho poblano pepper is the one that they make chili powder out of. So if you use a lot of chili powder in the winter, I grow this every year so I can dry them and make chili powder. The other thing up here, these extra herbs. All the herbs that I have, I'll go through in summer and probably again in fall and cut them back. You don't want to cut more than a third, and then let them dry. And I just mix all that together, and I put that stuff on everything. I put it in my pasta sauce, I put it on my chicken, put it on my pizza. I put it in bread, if you want an herbed bread, you can put it in your butter for an herb butter. But I have lots of family members that want me to give them my herb mix, but it works great with everything. There's just some other things on here. You can make herb salts and sugars too. Have a lavender sugar. Okay, so gardening resources. There's the home vegetable gardening in Kentucky. This one, you can look it up. And then my blog, my card was out there at the front. So if you guys want to follow along on my small space gardening, see what's going on in the garden this week, feel free to do that. And then we do have, on your way out, we have sweet pepper. You get a sweet pepper plant, and you get a petunia on your way out. I did, for those that really like hot peppers, I only got 4 of them, but there are 4 cayenne peppers out there. And those things do great in pots. You can even bring that cayenne pepper in the winter, and it'll hang out all winter, and then you can take it back out in April. You have cayenne peppers. So those little small peppers, they do well like that. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions.